and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here as we mark the 21st edition of the India Business Leader Awards, one of the most coveted awards in India, something that we're particularly proud of at CNBC-TV18. And, thank you to Standard Chartered for partnering with us for all these years, for a greater part of the 2 decades, to make the India Business Leader Awards happen. As part of the India Business Leader Awards, we've also been taking our conversations, our dialogue to different parts of the country. We call it the India Business Leaders Collective. And the idea really is to get all stakeholders on board to discuss what the roadmap for India should look like. Whether you call it Viksit Bharat, and there are all kinds of nomenclatures, but what we are asking leaders across the country to do is to deliberate and put forward their thoughts, their ideas, their priorities on what India needs to focus on to ensure that we can, in fact, achieve our true potential. We've just finished the India Business Leader Awards jury presentation. We had our esteemed jurors decide on who the winners will be. We will reveal those shortly. Not today, but you will see the awards being held in December, and so you'll have to wait a little bit. We'll keep the suspense going. But what we're going to now address is what the playbook for India should look like as we look at global dominance or achieving global dominance. And we've got a wide array of leaders here representing different sectors. So let's get straight to it. Arundhati Bhattacharya, 2025 has been the year of artificial intelligence. If you look at the kind of capex that big tech is putting into artificial intelligence, $500 billion. I mean, the mind boggles at the kind of numbers that these companies are talking about. In that context, then, what role, what relevance will India have as this global pecking order takes shape?
Well, one thing that India definitely has going for it is tech talent. We have very deep pool of tech talent amongst Indians, and the skill levels here are in no way less than whatever you can find in the rest of the world, okay? What we really need to go after, though, is to try to see how we can create a certain amount of technology here that is not as resource rich as what is being done maybe in the Western world. And this is entirely possible because in a matter of weeks, you saw where OpenAI and DeepSeek, the way it disrupted the whole story, it tells you that there are ways of getting the same things done, but not having to be, so resource intensive. There are ways of doing these things in a more frugal manner, and we need to look at what could be the models for enabling that. But having said that, I have to say that when artificial intelligence is concerned, there is always an element of fear. People are asking, should industries be worried? And there is one thing that I really want to tell industries, and that is, you should not be worried. You should be excited. Because artificial intelligence, by the way, is not something that's here now and will go tomorrow. It's here to stay. Now, it stays in what form and how it evolves is something that will come in the future. We don't know, but it is not going away, okay? So first and foremost, get excited about it, lean into it. Second, we have to understand that the way the developed world looks at artificial intelligence could be entirely different from the way we look at it. And the reason for that is, in the developed world, there is a lack of labor. So what they really need is maybe the robotic agents who actually can make up for that lost labor. In India, it's not a paucity of labor. We have enough people. What is it a paucity of? We don't have the ability to take the best of services to the last mile. You look at 1.4 billion people, you look at 600,000 villages, you look at 8 million SMEs. How is it possible for us to enable all of these numbers to really come up to potential if we don't use technology and we don't use AI? Preetha is from the healthcare industry, and she can tell you the kind of breakthroughs AI can do for individuals on an individual level is unimaginable if you try to do it in the brick and mortar way. So for countries like us, which are already has the kind of population that we have to look at using AI to enable our population to come up to potential. And therefore, being afraid of it is not going to help us. We need to really and truly internalize it to see how can we bring the best level of services right down to the last person and ensure that everybody has an equal platform and an equal chance to come up to their potential.
You know, that's an important point that you make, Arundhati Bhattacharya, that, in India, the models will be very different on the use cases as far as artificial intelligence is concerned. And the hope is that it will bridge some of the access deficits that we know of. But, you talked about the fact that you shouldn't be worried about AI. You should be excited. Let's talk about how companies are looking at India. OpenAI now offering ChatGPT free to the Indian market. Google, Gemini tying up with Jio, Perplexity tying up with Bharti Airtel. Clearly, big tech is excited about India, correct?
It is. And one of the reasons for that is because, the more you use all of these things, by the way, you are creating data for them.
So it's the Indian data that they're excited about.
Absolutely. Because India is a great market to sell to. Where will you find 1.4 billion people that are willing to consume? You look at the internet penetration in this country. You look at the mobile penetration of this country. You look at the amount of goods that are bought on the offline or the online channels in this country. You look at the number of UPI transactions in this country. This is a great country of consumers. Everybody will want data on this country.
Well, yes, data clearly is the new currency, and which is what has got a lot of the big tech companies excited. Preeta Reddy, let's talk about the AI opportunity as far as healthcare is concerned, and whether India can in many ways take the lead on being able to converge the use of AI as far as the healthcare sector is concerned. And I know Apollo has its own intelligent brain and intelligence engine that you're hoping to leverage.
So the problem in India is that we don't have enough trained manpower. We've got a large consumer base, but not enough people to service that. So the obvious answer is to be able to use AI or technology to help us navigate a lot of work where we need human skill to do. So I think that's where we can probably give answers to the rest of the world. What we have created internally is what we call the Clinician's Intelligence Engine, which you were referring to. So what it has done up to now is about 260 pathways. So if somebody comes into emergency rooms and people are struggling with what to do, at least it will tell you, please move in this direction. And so when we have pathways within our healthcare systems, and it's not only us, I think the entire gamut of what is available, and especially in the public sector hospitals, they are growing in leaps and bounds. They're investing into technology. They're investing into AI. So these answers, I think, will help the rest of the world. There are already pilots happening with the NHS and Indian institutions, a little bit with us, about how can we use AI, because, there's a huge wait list. They're struggling with lack of capacity. So AI is going to it may be grown in India. It may be an answer to a lot of healthcare problems globally. And I think if we work really hard and not move away from the ethics of what it should do, we should be really coming up with a whole lot of answers.
So you believe that India could write the playbook as far as the use of AI is concerned, really to address the paucity of healthcare professionals, the backlogs that we're seeing in the developed world, not just in India, but in the developed world as well?
I totally believe we can do it.
Okay. Mr. Sethi, let me move a little bit away from AI and talk about the financial sector. And, the expectation is that what we've done in digital payments, where India clearly has led the way, is it time now for the physical sector to also lead the way? And I think the government is basically focused on the fact that size matters, and size will matter even more as we go forward. Do you believe that the next 10, 15 years, consolidation will be the necessary imperative going forward?
You're talking about consolidation of banks, I suppose.
Yes.
So the consolidation obviously had helped the public sector banks. There were 26 public sector banks, now reduced to 12. And some of the scale benefits the consolidation has given to them. And we must also remember that the scale is important to leverage what technology people are talking about. If you don't have the scale, the investment in technology is impaired. And the return on technology investments are difficult to realize. So from that angle, probably going forward, there would definitely be some consolidation. What is the timeline? We do not know. So, but it is also important that there are fairly large banks like SBI, which have been adopting technology in a big way. The scale can be handled only by adoption of digitalization. What Mrs. Bhattacharya mentioned about UPI, SBI alone does almost 24 crore transactions on the UPI every day. And you can't handle this kind of scale and volumes unless you are constantly innovating and investing in that. And from a limited perspective of such investment, maybe going forward, some consolidation is required.
Well, you talked about 26 down to 12, Mr. Sethi. And I know that a lot of people are asking, and I know the DFS secretary has said that we need to have Indian banks in the top 10 ranking as far as the global banking space is concerned. By when do you believe that's possible? And do you believe that SBI will take the lead yet again in playing consolidator?
Absolutely. I think if it is one particular bank from a public sector space, but there are private banks also, which I don't think government is talking that only public sector has to be there. Yeah. They're talking Indian banking system, at least a couple of banks to be globally in there. So there are two categories when we talk about top global banks. One is by assets. I think SBI is eminently positioned to be going there. And the second is market capitalization. A couple of private banks are, having a good market capitalization, and SBI is one of them, which will join that club. So from that point of view, SBI is well poised to be in the top category.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck with that ambition. But, Mr. Singh, let me address the issue with you in terms of taking the lead across some of these sectors that we spoke of, some of these spaces that we spoke of, digital payments being one of them. Gift City is the other aspiration that the Indian government has put forward on being able to create those linkages between India and the world. I know Standard Chartered is focusing on that as well. What would you see as the next steps? What are you most excited about?
So firstly, I think a very strong stamp of approval on the India financial system. So with a lot of investments coming in, with a lot of innovation happening in India, it is now incumbent on us to also take that overseas. So we are seeing this in, for example, what is happening with UPI. So we already have 7 or 8 countries with UPI live. We have about 8 lakh transactions that happen on UPI cross-border. There are 1.5 million merchants who are already onboarded on this international UPI angle. We are also seeing the internationalization of the rupee, which is again something that has been accelerated by establishing of Gift City. Gift City, by the way, is one of the few international financial centers, and India is lucky to have established one of these well in time. When you look at the other international financial centers, and you see what sets them apart. So what India has done here in the foreign currency settlement system, so as to not have to wait for the US to wake up, we have a 24/7 US dollar clearing, which is already active amongst the banks in the Gift City. The Gift City has a sandbox. Gift City has various innovations that are coming in, which is all going to be a big game changer for the way we see investments coming into our country.
Well, speaking of investments coming into the country, Zia, let's address the issue of 2025 has also been a seminal year where India is now being branded the IPO factory of the world. What do you make of this trend that we're seeing? How sustainable is it likely to be? And what kind of value unlock does it bring to the table?
Well, from a law firm's perspective, I hope it goes on forever. But I think that, a lot of us thought the frothiness would cool down, but it hasn't. In fact, you see listing after listing every week. And I think the attractiveness of India globally to all the FIIs and FPIs is both one, to see the energy with the young ones that are going to market, and the second is the lack of an alternative to such a large market. So if you feel that there is global disaffection to China compared to India as a comparison, then the only other market to really monetize and invest in would be this country. As Arundhati said, 1.4 billion people, there is a market there to be looked at. I think that it's not just IPOs, Shireen, it's even private equity. Private equity allocations have geared more towards India. South Asia funds have been hived off so that they don't have to have Indian deals compete with the global deals with their ICs.
Yeah.
And the hot sectors remain the same. Healthcare, life sciences, education to some extent, all these startups which say 1 minute, 2 minutes, whatever. And real estate, evergreen. So we have seen a very positive upsurge of activity when it comes to this year. How much tariffs and the global geopolitics will change, but I am quite confident we will dance as we have danced, effectively.
We'll dance as we have danced, and I certainly hope that's the case. But Rahul, coming to you, speaking of dancing, which are the sectors that you believe are poised to dance into the future when we talk about India being able to dominate globally? Where do you have the most confidence?
Yeah, I think India is seeing a very wide array. It's not, unlike many economies, it's not very narrow. If I can categorize sectors into 3 or 4 groups, the first group is the whole indigenization group. If you look at one of the biggest pushes of recent times have been to reduce our import dependence, and everything that comes in, whether it is semiconductor chips or is it any kind of capital goods or defense equipment, all of them are getting localized, and the whole intent is to build private sector and strong players in that space. So that's, I think, very poised to grow. The second piece is the manufacturing piece in the global context, which appears to have hit some headwinds with the American situation, but in reality, it has forced us to take up reforms with a second, round of rigor. And the FTAs that we are signing with different other parts of the world do open up wider opportunities. So it is our chance where for the first time in the world, all the corporates are looking at resilience over cost competitiveness. I think it's the first time that people are realizing the value of managing risks, managing diversification in their supply chain. India has to be a player. It's the only place where you have such strong talent base, such strong young working and manufacturing population. So that bodes well for us in the global context, as long as we continue to be cost competitive and R&D wise driven. And the third is anything that is based on the consumer base of India. I think 1.4 billion and growing, not just growing, but the income pyramid moving to the income diamond, which means people consume more and more as they get richer and affordability goes up. We are seeing everything from basic healthcare to accessories to education to consuming class, aspiration levels driving, urbanization driving. So that is anyway staple base case growth for the Indian economy. So that piece again is a big part of the puzzle. And fourth and last but not the least is everything tech in the future with our talent base that is there, with the whole, and I think in some ways the whole H-1B visa thing might actually help us to retain some more talent in the country and create greater innovation, greater investment, which I think we've always done in the context of IT services and the whole GBS wave that you are seeing. But with the AI wave coming, it could create a new group of industries which could be great for us in the future.
Yes, yeah.
Shireen, I think maybe this audience appreciates it, but I've always marveled at the fact as to how underpenetrated we are still for so much. Arundhati will tell you how underpenetrated we are for insurance, for example. We are the lowest energy consuming per unit country in the world. Our mutual funds are less than double digit. So while we are seeing this only take us to We have to do nothing to achieve this growth.
So I so agree. 6.5%. People often ask us, when will India's GDP start to move to the orbit that China grew for the 20 years? I think for us, 6.5% is our. We have to do nothing to do 6.5%, because our consuming class will take it the 6.5%. The other pieces of energy transition, semiconductor, the export, international opportunity, indigenization, they are all on top. And if that plays out well, this could easily go to 8 or 9%. But I think we are one of the fewer bright spots in the world where you find a certain both risk profile in an acceptable zone, but also the base case growth, really attractive.
Well, the base case growth, as both Zia and you are pointing out, we can perhaps do 6.5% even on autopilot. But Arundhati Bhattacharya, we're talking about companies like NVIDIA crossing over to 5 trillion, and we're talking about the Indian economy at 4 trillion. So you've got companies that are bigger than most economies, even including some of the fastest growing economies like ours at this point in time. What will it take to get us from the 6.5% now to the 8.5%, 9%, 10% aspiration? If we do want to create the kind of penetration that all of these companies are hoping for, if we do want to go from the per capita of 2,500 to 5,000 and really become, middle income, so to speak, what will it take at this point in time?
So, that's exactly why I think AI is so exciting for us. What it takes initially is for us to be able to give our people the basic quality of services that they need. Education, healthcare, absolutely important. Look at the quality of education that we are able to deliver in even the tier 2, tier 3 cities. Unless we are able to improve that, how can we expect people to become more productive, more innovative, more, capable of holding businesses and actually ramping them up? So, starting from education to healthcare to making available to people the resources that they need, AI can play actually a very, very large part. And it can all happen pretty quickly. It's not something that's going to take years and years and ages and ages. And that's what's very exciting about India, the way we can exponentially grow. If you look at all of the online e-commerce companies today, the number of pin codes that they're already serving. And I know, for instance, this is a home story, but still, the lady who looks after my house, she comes from a remote village in West Bengal. And I had never even thought that, a person in a remote village would be using a hairdryer. Just the other day, she sent a hairdryer home, and the address is above the high school, village so-and-so, district so-and-so, and it gets delivered. The name of the person and the only address is above the high school. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, this is the way that you are seeing unmet demand being met. There is so much of unmet demand in India that you cannot even imagine. And that is getting, released on account of the digital stack that the government has created, on the basis of which so much innovation is taking place. As you make this digital stack richer, if you look at ONDC, the biggest job it will do is to bring all of these mom and pop kirana shops onto the online medium. Now, when that happens, can you imagine the amount of consumption that will increase? And all of this has a knock-on effect. And that's why, actually 6.5%, you're very right. You do nothing, it will still happen. 9.5% also, I believe you don't have to do much as you formalize the economy. Because just the formalization of the economy is going to add to it. Okay? Today, so much happens in cash which is still not formal. The more you can formalize the economy, the more this will come about. Going double digits, yes, that's where it will need more of infrastructure, more of ease of doing business. Many more of these things need to come in. But whether it's doable or not in a country like India, eminently doable.
Can I add 3 or 4 points which are very specific? Firstly, you talked about NVIDIA. For that to happen, we need more large companies and corporates to think at scale, vision at scale. I think it has been an area where we have lagged in very few industries. We have global dominators, right? And with our kind of tech base, with our kind of skill set that we have, we need our biggest, we had the entrepreneur event today. We need people to envision at scale. Think, can we be number 1, number 2, number 3 in the world? And that requires a mindset shift. Second, I think we need the whole MSME space to come up. We cannot grow with only large companies because the whole, if you go back to the auto industry, which is one industry which has done well, it is not Maruti alone that drove the growth. It is a full ecosystem. And we need the MSME to grow. And we require a holistic set of actions to happen, both from financing to skilling to manpower, etc. Third, we need to get our 50% rural agricultural population more productively utilized. Today the value of skilling is not being felt. We have a dichotomy where on one hand, most companies will say, like you said, there is not enough skilled manpower. Yeah. On the other hand, we have a lot of people unemployed or sitting in villages doing nothing and twiddling their thumbs because it's just more convenient. So how can we have that kind of a dichotomy? And the answer lies in skilling and getting them out of villages to urban centers to work and create that attractive proposition, which again needs to happen. So in my view, and the last is catching the wave early, right? Yeah. We've caught this time the semiconductor wave, the energy transition wave, right? If you look at where China went ahead 20 years back, we talked about the rare earth, we talked about EVs. They caught that wave ahead and invested when the sectors were not mature. So for the first time, I'm seeing we are taking lead in newer spaces, and that requires innovation. And if you look at the R&D spend of India, it is 0.4% of GDP. You contrast that to Korea, it is 6% of GDP, right? So more companies need to invest in innovation to really drive. So those are some of the points I have.
Has there been a mindset change? Does Apollo want to globally dominate? Preeta, of course, you already dominated India, but has there been a mindset change on wanting to be a global dominator?
I think everybody wants to be a global dominator. It depends on which part of what you're doing. And I think skilling, India is really poised to heal the world with the kind of manpower we have and the capabilities and a large English-speaking population. If we really get it right, we will be able to send skilled workforce not only for our country, but we can do it for the rest of the world. So there is an aspect of world domination there. Can we be the back office for a lot of what is happening in the healthcare space? It's already beginning to happen. So I think we'll end up just doing more and more of it. Can we deliver healthcare at the point of care? Then again, that depends on global policies. It's going to evolve with time, so I'm not even going there. But world dominance in our space, in the healthcare space, if you take any great hospital in the US, so many of them are of Indian origin, who've gone to colleges here and who've graduated from here. So in a way, we are doing it. But as a group, as a company, can we do it? I think in a different way, not exactly in being able to, run hospitals or deliver healthcare, but I think we can do it for labor, we can do it for back office, we can do it with, the right way of usage of drugs, for intelligence, in different ways, yes.
Mrs. Sethi, since we're talking about global dominance, we're also talking about growth, credit growth and the aspiration to kind of fuel the kind of growth that India wants to see, not satisfied with 6.5%. What will it take for us to get to, as Arundhati was pointing out, 10% growth?
Traditionally, the bank-led credit growth in India has been 2 to 3% over the nominal GDP, which means that it is mutually reinforcing concepts. If the GDP is there and the credit growth gets added 2-3%, and the credit growth again fuels the GDP growth, right? So today the banking system is in a very good position to support the growth. It's not that the credit growth is not happening. Earlier also I mentioned that there are certain sectors witnessing very good credit growth. Even among the corporates, there are renewables and roads. But what we are not seeing is the core industries not utilizing the credit as much. Whether it is the corporate credit alone may not be an indicator, because a lot of these corporates have huge amounts of cash. They're consuming their cash for capital expenditure. But it's also a fact that they need to invest more. And one of the things what I hear from them, they're looking for sustained consumption demand to be there. What is sustained consumption demand is a big question, whether you want 2 quarters, 4 quarters. We have a visible consumpmption uptick now. And if it is sustained, I'm sure.
And that's secular, urban, rural, both?
I think mostly it is all encompassing. At least if you see the September and October numbers, I think there seem to be a good demand on the consumption side. The problem is that a lot of uncertainty globally.
Yeah.
Like I think there's also many of the people are deferring their capital expenditure plans. And number 2, the technology enables them to operate at a higher capacity utilization now. Earlier, traditionally, if some industry reaches 75% capacity utilization, they would go for expansion. But now they're able to operate at 90% capacity utilization. So that means there will be a lag, even if it is sustained consumption demand is there. Some of the sectors will take some time to come back to the expenditure plans.
Mr. Singh, what are we seeing on the cross-border side, etc.? We talked about some of the uncertainties that we're dealing with at this point in time. But, on balance, what are some of the trends that you're watching for that you believe we should be mindful of?
So Indian companies are like never before. They are deleveraged, they have cash, and they also have global aspirations. Like Mr. Sethi mentioned, one way for them to grow is to acquire, and that's what they've done in the last 6 to 8 months. We've seen a lot of activity on the cross-border front. And if we are able to enable, with some of the changes in guidelines, smaller companies, SMEs, for example, if they are able to buy entities in Japan with IP, and that can be supported by Indian banks on M&A, which is now being debottlenecked. Those are the kind of things that could really spur growth. Whenever there is an Indian company buying a distressed asset in Europe or anywhere else, there are opportunities for them to turn it around, and almost always they have been successful. It's just a matter of how long it takes to get there to that critical mass. So that's, I think, a great opportunity. Secondly, when we are seeing India in a leadership position, is instead of going around India, now the investments, the innovation, the capital, the trade is happening in India or through India. So this is the second trend that is happening. That is also because, like you earlier mentioned about digitization. So we were the earliest probably in the cycle to fully digitize trade, as when we got EDPMS, IDPMS, we got a lot of support from various parts of the institutions to digitize a lot of stuff. So I think there again, Indian trade has been, there is an ecosystem developed around large corporates. We were talking about the winner takes it all, but that ecosystem around the large corporates has developed really well. And again, that has been enabled digitally. Thousands and millions of suppliers, SMEs, have all been enabled to grow and also participate in this international growth.
Mr. Sethi, from a regulation point of view, I think to take forward what we just heard there from Mr. Singh, cross-border acquisitions and so on and so forth, the banking sector, in terms of regulations, will be able to fuel that kind of ambition and that kind of appetite?
So the recent announcement in the MPC, and of course the draft guidelines which have been issued on the M&A financing participation by the Indian banks, is a reinforcement of the confidence of the regulator in Indian bank. Almost more than 2 decades we've been away from financing. Well, the cross-border acquisition financing was permitted by the Indian banks. It's only that Indian acquisitions happening in India, Indian banks were not doing. And of course, PD was having a last laugh earlier. So the Indian banks would definitely be interested in being part of this the story. I think we are, both in terms of the balance sheet capability and also underwriting capability, Indian banks are well positioned for that.
Zia, in terms of regulatory changes, what do you believe needs to be done further? We've, of course, seen many changes coming in to try and foster AIFs, to try and get family offices and really unlock that domestic capital that we've been talking about. But anything more that you believe needs to be done on the regulatory front to really create that big unlock that we've been waiting for?
I think, no regulator will be Big Bang. It's just not in their nature. And so I think that incremental small steps which keep improving the pain points that are there in the system, which I think is happening at every level. If you look at SEBI, if you look at RBI, if you look at IRDA, they're all listening. And whilst they have their own policies, their procedures, their precedents, I mean, they're still willing to go a little bit out of the trodden path, provided that they can justify it in hindsight to the powers that be, right? And I think the confidence factor, which underwent a little bit of a dip, I would say, has resurrected again just by using the numbers, right? But Shirin, I want to make one point which is very different from what you've been talking about. Our women, okay? So our GDP can increase if we just have more women in our workforce. And India has a 47% leaky pipeline of women dropping out. So all this AI and financial regulation, it is skilling, it is stickiness, it is employers, it is male champions. And then if you talk about 1.4 billion, there's a slight amount of women there, right?
Slight amount.
So, exactly. So I think that what will attract more capital is if we have more skilled, as Arundhati said, talent that cannot lose out half of the sky. And so I think the regulators apart, I think the broader picture is the government is focusing on the fact that this is untapped. I think the government, when it comes to the pain points, has, to my mind, never really stood in the way. Government has let business run the way it has to run, unless it's banning online or something like that, which they think is just evil for some reason. But I think the regulators themselves have realized that we are thirsty for more capital. We're thirsty for... NVIDIA's coming in. Google has come in. Meta has come in. Everybody's come in. Why are they coming in? There has to be a business case apart from saying we're 1.4 billion people. So I think the stars are converging very well. And if you ask me, the next 2-3 years, if we don't see some real growth, we have ourselves to blame.
Well, you know, you talked about Meta and NVIDIA and Google, and they're all here in India. But where do you believe we are going to find our own versions of Meta, Google, NVIDIA, OpenAI, etc.? Where do you believe those Indian champions will emerge from? I'm going to put that question to each one of you. Zia, I'll start with you.
Well, the champions have to answer. Because it's not just being a champion, it's investing, it's being there, it is actually failing, succeeding, failing, succeeding. It's not easy, and it's not that we don't have great Indian companies, but today you can't compare them to an NVIDIA or an Apple or a Meta. Do I think they'll get there? For God's sakes, I hope so. And do they want to be there? I'm sure they do. But I think it's still a journey for us. And I think that, as he was saying, China has gotten ahead of the race for decades. And so I think with the energy, the determination, the wind behind our sails with the government, which is very much wind behind our sails right now, they have no choice. Because if it's make in India, global supply chains, deal with the geopolitics, what else is there but to be self-reliant? And who can be self-reliant except our India companies make us self-reliant? To the extent that they have to become a NVIDIA abroad, I'm not sure it's overnight.
No, it certainly won't be overnight, but where do you believe we will see those champions emerge, Arundhati Bhattacharya?
So basically, you have to understand something. The one thing that our education system has not really enabled us to do is to think differently and to innovate. We've not been taught that way. Our education system has sort of, disciplined us in a way that the way of learning is, you look at the past and you go forward. It's not been totally out of the box. So if you ask where the change starts, the change has to start right at the bottom. I would say the first thing that needs to change is the education system, where you allow people the ability to think for themselves and to fail if necessary. Fail fast, scale fast, try again, okay? So that is the kind of change that we need in the generations that are coming up. By the way, whether the education system is already up to it or not across the board, it's definitely not there, but there are schools and there are places where these are being encouraged. And in the new people who are coming in to work for us, we are seeing this hunger for being innovators, for being different. Because, you know, earlier, for instance, I was connected to IIT Kharagpur, as you know, my husband was there. So every single last person used to go abroad from IIT Kharagpur. Today, more than half of the class stay back in order to become entrepreneurs and startups. That's a huge change. That's a huge change where people are beginning to think that, yes, there are ways that I can do things and I don't need to go abroad in order to get a great job over there. I can make my money over here. That change itself sort of reflects the fact that innovators will happen. Now, in which area it will happen? Very difficult to predict at this point of time. Pharma is obviously an area where we definitely have a lead. Can we build on that? Can we have IPs that come out of India itself? Absolutely it can. In respect of IT, can it happen? Yes, it can, because we have very deep IT talent. And if you look at Silicon Valley, there is not one company over there that doesn't have a substantial IT workforce of Indian origin. So can it not happen in this country as well? Yes, it can happen. So there will be very many areas where it can happen in India. Because here, you have to use, remember one thing, we have to use very frugal amounts of money or resources in order to get to the same place. And frugal innovation is what we should really, concentrate on. If we can do that, if we can be even better at a much lesser cost, then automatically, the business will come to us. So yeah, we have to think about how to get there. I don't think we've got it entirely right. For that matter, Zia, and I keep talking about it to her, that, say for instance, the delays in our courts, the delays in rendering justice is not something that can be, continued for ages.
Yeah.
What's happening now? We are finding that these startups are coming up, young startups, straight out of campuses, that have created these arbitration forums. And they are registering companies along with all their suppliers and dealers and saying, register on us and we'll do the arbitration when we'll ensure that you get quick, settlement of whatever are the issues that are bothering you. So, where we find that there are obstacles, we will find ways around it. And that is the way, this, basically, even though it's not always said in the right way, the jugaad, it is Indian jugaad that is going to get us there. It may not get us there in a very quick manner. It may not get us there in as controlled a manner as NVIDIA and everybody else got there, but it is very much there in India, and that is something that is to our benefit. Because in this world, which is changing so rapidly, I don't think there is any other country that is so well trained to run with uncertainty, to run with whatever is thrown at us as this country is.
So Rahul, where will the winners emerge from in your assessment?
So if you look back in time, there are three spaces we have reasonable success and winners. One is the auto industry, second is the IT and IT services industry, and third is the pharma industry. Those are the three places I feel India made some dent. Maybe we don't have winners like the way we would like, but at least there is some dent, right? As much as I would like, I think manufacturing, China has moved way ahead. And while we must try and catch up, to believe that we will become a large global player, I think looks like a little bit of a far cry. I am a little bit aligned with Arundhati. I think where our edge can come is where innovation can happen. Our biggest strength is in the startup ecosystem. With the more younger population investing in, staying back in the country, investing, if we create innovation hubs, if the tech and the startup ecosystem get well funded as well as the Silicon Valley does, if we just harbor the culture of already, if you look at the kind of innovations several startups have done, whether it is urban company or it is, the last mile delivery companies or e-commerce or, the quick commerce guy, I think it's the payment system companies, they are ahead of the global edge. So I think this is where our population, our innovative mindset, our tech background and our frugal innovation, I really like that word, helps us creating, but then we need to support them with greater funding, with greater, and we need to retain our talent here, and that's where I would bet.
Mr. Sethi, you're willing to put your money where Rahul's mouth is. You're actually investing in some of these startups, including, the companies like Lenskart, which have opened for subscription today, even though there are questions being asked about whether valuations have run far ahead of performance.
So the issue of valuations is there even for NVIDIA, what you mentioned. I think let's not get into the valuation issue. The critical component, I think all of us are on the same page that if India has to, or a few of the industries, sectors, or entities have to emerge on the global sphere, innovation is the key. And so far, even if you take pharma, IT services, there's nothing much great innovation which has happened to break into the global scenario. The scale has helped. The low cost has helped. But are we really innovating is a question which we need to ask.
But isn't that what Arundhati is saying?
Yes.
The innovative mindset.
Absolutely.
Has to be
I think that's the
born.
crux of the issue. Innovation along with the skilling of our people. Otherwise, there's a big challenge. 140 crore people and a lot of youth getting added to the workforce. If you do not have right skilling and right healthcare, these are the two important things. If you do not invest or develop skill set as an healthcare, you would have, instead of demographic dividend, a demographic burden.
Yeah.
I hope that, I think from policy making point of view, these are taken care of. But the underlying theme, all of us agree, is that how we bring the innovation, and if it means that funding the startups, both as by way of equity or debt, I think we are keen on.
Keen on that. Mr. Singh?
So I would say this will be driven out of India's thirst for growth, and I would say thirst for energy, because energy is the backbone of every growth engine that we've all talked about. So innovation, investment, and inclusion will come by the sustainability and energy platforms that we have. If we put all of that together, I think then that ecosystem is that will drive us further, and that's where I think willy-nilly we will get to all the stuff that we were all talking about.
Preeta, I'll give you the final word.
I think we're comparing too much with the Western world and saying, will we be like them? China actually didn't do it. They looked internally and they said, can we be the manufacturing whatever for the rest of the world? And they did what they had to do for 20 years. Within ourselves, we have 1.4 billion population, an intelligent population. And, when we did a study within our system, 80% of our staff are using smartphones. So there's an answer out there. Internally, if we can do a lot to just raise the bar on economics, on the economy of the country, of retail consumption, of what people need to do, education, healthcare. There's so much of gold to be mined within our country. And I think maybe for the next 10, 15 years, policies should be directed in that fashion. We have to invest within our country. We have to see what can we do to see that the Indian economy grows, because we've already overtaken the UK. We're already in third place. And maybe a little bit of inward looking is not a bad idea at all. And that's what I would love to do for the next 5 to 10 years. Forget about, being global or going to the West, because we're still in awe of the West, and I don't understand why we should be. We should be in awe of our own country.
We should take pride in what we've been able to do, but more importantly, focus on how we can further refine our skills, how we can further build on our competitive advantage. There's absolutely nothing wrong with looking inwards to find our strengths, but we also need to look outwards to be able to integrate with the global economy and take a larger share of the global economy. The idea to do that, of course, the antidote to all of that will be higher rates of growth, which is the aspiration, built on the talent, the human capital that we enjoy, which is amongst our biggest competitive advantages at this point in time, and of course with the purpose of equity and inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, many, many thanks to our esteemed guests for joining us here for the India Business Leader Awards jury, as well as the India Business Leader Awards collective. Thank you very much for your ideas, your suggestions on the road ahead for India as it achieves global dominance. Thank you very much for joining us here this evening. Thank you very much to our panel.
Thank you.